when you're all messed up. It's a great relief to be understood. It's a shame still waters run deep. So let us walk right into the forest, to the trees and the rising sun. It is something we can't outrun. I do whatever it takes to hold you, whatever it takes to you.
Divine Source, Great Spirit, by your love and your grace, we come this day with open minds and open hearts, asking that you show us the way, show us where the healing's to be found, show us what we need to see about our journey, guide us in all ways. Thank you, and so it is.
Welcome to Talking Spirit. My name is Yuta, and I'm back with my friend Elizabeth.
Greetings, everyone.
Yeah, well, welcome back. I was in prayer this morning around what we wanted to share about today, and my mind kind of just went back to the last episode that we recorded, and we talked a little bit about massage and meridian work. And so what kind of had popped in is that we could talk about body work and body in general, and maybe explore a little bit just the whole concept of a body and how we can approach the body on the spiritual path, and also share from our own experiences when it has been helpful for us to address certain things with the body, for example, through massage or through energy work, hands-on or hands-off. And yeah, we'll just see where that takes us today. I know for myself, having my body touched by somebody that is seemingly trained, so in massage or in some kind of other healing modality, has been really helpful for me at certain times, for maybe for integration of lessons that had been coming up and they just needed to fully settle in, or also to use it as a tool to discover things in my mind that I wasn't able to really access in other ways. And having someone work with my body could sort of open new doorways and let me access things about my mind. Yeah, like I said, like I couldn't really access in other ways. So yeah, that's the topic today, and we're happy you're here with us, and we'll see where the spirit wants to take this idea.
We have shared that we generally do a check-in before we hit the record button, just to see where our minds are at, whether it feels right to us. And we said before this, like, who knows what's going to come up in the moment? It always seems to me that when we hit the record button, the spirit comes in a new way and adds some sparkle to my mind about these things. And I wasn't expecting this one to come in, but about 20 some years ago, I met a family member of a friend. And at the time, he was a doctor. And I was expanding in various ways in my life and was maybe just in the midst of this Peruvian shamanism work. And he was a doctor and had been for many years. And I must have said something about energy and energy work and got such a fierce, strong, kind of aggressive reflection back. And there was like a feeling that there was no room for conversation about anything like that. And for me, I've found throughout my journey that the idea of the body and energy work and healing, that it's quite rich and quite helpful to have been looking at and exploring those concepts. But like this reflection of this doctor, it took a lot of mind opening at times for me to embrace what was an invitation from the Spirit. I guess at that time, I had been quite a number of years looking at things like the Course in Miracles. I had been a part of a yoga, meditation, Vedanta community. And in both of those arenas, there's this idea of we're not the body, we're much more than. We are spirit, in fact. And in different ways, both of those paths are geared towards transcending the illusion of the body, the illusion of a separate self, the illusion of the world. And the teachings and sometimes the practices, such as doing asanas, doing a yoga posture, using the body in a certain way, was for the purpose of releasing the body and releasing the mind and releasing blockages. Just as the workbook in A Course in Miracles and in other practices and other ways, whirling dervish, you might go and whirl and twirl for a couple hours to transcend the sense of the body. So there are lots of different ways that we have over time come to try to transcend the body. And for me, in those early years of exploring my path, there were lots of messages of, I'm not the body, woohoo! And for me, there was a real desire to be done with the body, to drop the body. And so those kinds of ideas were really compelling. But they also became kind of a distraction, or they became a place for me to get a little lost at times. And so the Spirit has come in over and over again for me, for my mind, don't take it in if it's not helpful to you, but for me, I had to address the body with the Spirit. And for me, doing so in containers of so-called energy work or hands-on healing or chiropractic, or if you want to just call energy medicine, however people like to talk about it, doesn't matter to me. But I couldn't just park the body and say, oh, I don't need to think about it anymore. I still seem to have physical pain. I still seem to have symptoms that would show up. The mind needed healing, but it seemed like the body also needed healing at times. There's the idea that the body's neutral and that, in fact, it's a blank screen, you might say, but we seem to take things out on the body. We seem to project mind stuff onto the body. And so the idea of transcending, because we're always talking about this for the purpose of cleansing and purifying our thinking, our minds, our vehicles, however you like to think of it, for the purpose of awakening. And in my way of thinking about it, and in teachings that are all throughout the mind, that awakening is about returning to the light. Well, if we believe ourselves to be bodies, dense, real, and true, then we're probably going to have some work to do around that idea. And for me, the idea of healing work and energy work, it's been vital. It has been something I could not just put off in a box that I say, I am not the body, and then find my way into an experience of a lessening of the density. So for me, this is a really juicy conversation. I've had lots of reflections around it that have been interesting for me and helpful for me. And so, yeah, we'll see where else this goes, but that's just what's coming up at the moment.
Yeah, that's great. I think, like, as I'm just looking back at my journey a little bit, there's been there's been almost like an ebb and flow with focus and not focus on the body. And I think when when I first joined the spiritual community, it was really, really helpful for me to focus on like all the projects that we were working on, and kind of regardless of what was going on in my body. And it was actually really helpful for a certain time, so that almost like I could have these experiences of, transcending when I was feeling tired, or transcending sort of this idea that I needed to rest because I just got my period, or, whatever, like I've got a headache, and instead of taking the day off. I'm going to try and work through this by, just focusing on the work that is presented for the day for me. And it seemed like there came a point where that really needed to change, and almost like the spirit was asking me to, it's like it's not a paradox, but it's kind of is, right? It's like the spirit started to want me to do things differently after a while. And, on those days where I was feeling low, it actually was then more sort of given for me to actually take the day off and rest. So like there was different sort of directions from the spirit throughout my spiritual journey in terms of what to do with the body. And, kind of comes back down to what we always say, that it's a very practical kind of path. This whole awakening journey is very practical and it's very individualized. And yeah, I found listening to the body and seemingly giving it things it needs very helpful, versus kind of coming from this place of I'm not the body, and so I just don't pay attention to what's going on. I know sometimes obviously it can be distraction, so that's why I'm saying like it's a very individualized and practical kind of journey, because it all depends on what comes out in your prayer session with the spirit, right? Am I supposed to do anything with this or am I not? But yeah, I've had some amazing experiences with somebody working on my body and also me working on other bodies. I've talked about this before. I went through massage school, and so in a class of, I don't know how many we were, 30 or something. There's a lot of body work being exchanged on a weekly basis, and it was really interesting for me to get a feeling for different bodies and sort of what goes on for different people. Like I know for myself, when you were talking, for some reason I was just thinking back when I started massage school, and we kind of got to this place where it was the first time to get on the table and actually touch somebody or be touched. Our teacher was sort of suggesting that as much as we can to relax our muscles and to let whoever was working on us kind of carry the weight, not only theoretically, but literally. And I found that to be a really easy thing for me, like just to let go and let somebody else sort of hold the weight of my body. But I know, certain people just couldn't do it. There was so much fear around being taken care of, maybe, or somebody else feeling how heavy your body is, which can be really, can kind of rub up against self-consciousness and stuff like that. But it was just a really, initial sort of journey of seeing how different things kind of seem to manifest in the body. And, we didn't do just traditional massage. We also did, one of my favorite things we did was craniosacral therapy, which is working with the different bones in your skull and in the sacrum. And that's when like it started to get really interesting for me, because it seemed like a more of a spiritual modality, and we were actually going into seeing if we could see things. Like I remember one time the teacher asked us to see if we could find out what animal somebody is. And yeah, we just did some interesting exercises, like, you were talking about it sort of being a transcendental kind of thing. You're kind of accessing different dimensions when you seem to be working with the body. And yeah, I know for myself, there's been, like I said, in the intro, there's been times where I've been going through things, and, obviously my initial thing to find out what's going on inside is to go to the spirit in prayer. And sometimes that's not fully like been the way to shed light on the entire picture, and then being offered some kind of work with the body. Sometimes I work on my own body too, as it feels guided. And it just seems like it unlocks these little doors that I can't access otherwise. Like there's some kind of, like you said, like the mind can, the mind projects all of its beliefs and problems onto the world. So, you know, we should never assume that our body isn't part of that projection screen as well, and or make an exception to how we can work with the body, because we've talked about symbols and all of this stuff and reinterpreting symbols in the world, and I think there can be a tendency to sort of like put the body in a different box to everything else. I've fallen into that sort of trap myself, and yeah, I think kind of just like having this open mind to seeing if the spirit wants to actually work with your body and use your body in some way to help you heal your mind is a really sweet and also very gentle and nurturing way, yeah, really to approach this whole awakening journey. And yeah, it seems like there's also a lot of, it's like people aren't getting enough touch anymore, not enough affection anymore, and it seems like there's something that's kind of affecting the mind in that way too. So, sometimes just a hug can be body work as well. And yeah, so I think just the idea of being open to seeing, like to just explore the whole picture, which includes the body, and seeing how the spirit wants to approach that piece of the projection, and not just everything that we seem to see with the eyes of this body, or feel with it, or hear with it, but actually see if the spirit can also work with this thing that seems to perceive and feel and hear. Yeah, it's been a really cool journey for me in that respect. And there's so much I could go into, but I'll shoot it back to you and see what comes up to you.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite things to talk about, really, this whole topic. It's just been a part of my journey since I was a kid. Just I've told this story before, but it's showing up again, of being in the kitchen with my mother. And I don't know how old I was, but I was somewhere between probably 2 and 4 years old. And I felt guided to slide my chair over to the stove where she was cooking and to crawl up on it. And I remember so vividly not being a 2 to 4 year old, but being a clear mind that I was to put my hands onto the burner. And I remember thinking so clearly, am I really going to do this? Like it was a guidance. There was something to be done to put my hands on the burner, and I had some awareness it was going to hurt. And I put my hands on the burners and I went blank and out, gone, and severely burned my hands. Now, I view that sort of as like a little bit of an activation of some sort. And I've always had healing energy move through my hands. Whether you think of that as just a story that I've put into my own thinking or not, it doesn't matter. But I have found myself drawn throughout my whole life to a laying on of hands. My dog had a stick sticking out of his belly one day, came and laid down on his back and put his belly open to me to rub it, and there was a stick sticking out. And my instant thought was to lay my hands on him. Not a good, a bad, a right or wrong. It's just the way it's been for me. And as a 5-year-old, I saw my father was going to die of a heart attack that he was creating in this moment where he was so angry about something. I saw that he was creating a story energetically that was likely to lead to a heart attack. And in fact, he had 2 or 3 heart attacks at the end of his life. So, we're constantly communicating with the stories around us, with the energy fields around us, with the mind around us, however you want to think about it. We're constantly in a dance with this information. And some of us seem to grok information that seems outside of time. Some of it seems time-based, doesn't matter. but this is the realm I swim in. And I have found such grace in being with someone to facilitate the letting go of the layers of the onion that have built up around the seeming light that we are. I was seeing Russian nesting dolls. And if we allow ourselves to imagine that we are eternal beings that seem to keep coming here or coming into form in some way, we seem to, in this moment, be on what's called planet Earth as Utah and Elizabeth. But let's just say we've had bazillions of lifetimes. Well, I seem to see with people when I get my hands on them or when I just sit with them, stories come forth. Whether they're my stories or their stories doesn't matter. My job is to sit with spirit in those moments where anything's revealed and just work on letting it go. Over to you, spirit. Cleanse and clear this. Whatever's not helpful about this. I'm just here to be a person to say, let's release it, right? Like I have a job that spirits show me I'm to do when I'm in these energy fields. And it seems that often people, when they choose to heal, then the records, you might say, of their greater journey come up to the surface because there's a call in their hearts and in their minds for healing. When we have an open-mindedness and open-heartedness to the greater journey, then the spirit can come in, the light can come in to help us reorient, recode, reconnect, recalibrate, whatever it is that's needed, as you said, in some way. There are different ways that we need support at times. And sometimes it's just going to be a mental exercise where we're just thinking about stuff and we're talking to spirit in our minds and we're learning concepts and we're letting go of concepts. It can be very much mental based. Then there are times where it's emotional based, where we need the good cry, we need to scream because we're angry, we need to face those emotions. Sometimes it's body based. We seem to believe ourselves to be these beings with these different aspects to ourselves. And so sometimes the body needs to get used to facilitate the letting go of whatever the stories are. And again, for me, I've just been watching it for years doing this kind of work. I have one friend particularly who I've done 20 plus years, 20 years of hands-on work. And it's been very interesting and it's been very healing. And there's been incredible transformation. And I don't know, from what spirit has shown me, I don't know how anyone transcends the body without having some degree of this kind of help that we're talking about. So for me, it's like a massive piece of how I get used. I'm happy to lay down in this lifetime. If this is a lifetime I'm not supposed to do this stuff anymore, and this is a lifetime where that whole idea of energy work and healing and all the rest is supposed to be dropped so that I'm fully transcended, great. However, in this life, it seems that this is how I get used. And I've witnessed people who were going blind stop losing their vision. I've witnessed people who are colorblind get the color back. I've witnessed people who, have all kinds of physical, mental, emotional problems when they get facilitated by the spirit relative to the body in some way, dynamic healing happens. So for me, there really isn't, ultimately, can we say that this is all the mind? Yes, there are teachings on that level. At the deepest level, can we accept that and embrace that and go for the healing that way? You betcha. But many of us need kind of ancillary support that is not just that direct. Some of us need help, as you said, to maybe through a loving touch. Lots of story there for me in my journey. Lots of us got hit, lots of us got tickle tortured, lots of us got inappropriately touched by teachers or clergy people in a church or whatever, right? There's a lot of healing that seems to be needed back to what we think of as the vehicle that we're in. And so for me, I know there are people that transcend this reality structure, the body, their experience, without any idea of energy work or support or healing in this way on the physical. I'm not one of those people. I'm happy to be shown it's not necessary, right? I'm open-minded about it, but it seems like the Spirit has shown me the value of it and the necessity of it for so many of us. So,
Yeah. Yeah, I'm just thinking back to when I was in my first marriage. My husband then, at one point, he he suffered whiplash at work from like a big riding lawnmower. And for some reason, that pushed him into practicing yoga, and specifically through the teachings of Yogananda, Paramahansa Yogananda. And I didn't like get into it a ton, but if I remember correctly, a huge piece about what Yogananda was teaching was all the work on the body was really only done with the purpose to allow the body to comfortably receive the spirit.
mm,
It was like all of the postures and all of the stretching and bending and strengthening and loosening was all done so that it wasn't really so much to like have the body receive anything, but it's like when the mind is aware of the body, it's not aware of the spirit, right? You could say in very simple terms. So all of that yoga work was done so that the body was so free of any restrictions that it kind of dropped out of awareness in times of prayer. And I really like that concept. And I think Jesus talks about that in A Course in Miracles as well, somewhere. That, yeah, kind of like in prayer and meditation, we want to be in some kind of position that makes us not really have to worry about the body. So I kind of like that aspect of, how we can look at the body and what we can do to it or might want to do to it, sort of as a way to work with the body so that it becomes less of a strain on the mind, so to speak. I like that piece of the whole idea. And yeah, I know that sometimes, in my little journey, there was a specific time that I told Elizabeth about before we recorded, and it's just coming back in, where it felt like because of the touch I was receiving in the moment, it actually helped me transcend also in the moment, not forever, but in the moment, any idea of being limited. It was a time where several people had put their hands on me in like a loving sort of healing touch kind of way. And I remember laying there and I felt like the scarecrow in The Wizard of Oz. I just felt like I was stuffed with straw. And in the moment, there was such a safety and surrender that I just had the thought like, wow, they could just take all of my straw and I would be forever happy and I would feel so safe. And, I think, could I have that experience otherwise? I'm sure. I haven't. That was the only time that I've experienced something like that. And so I think there is a power to that kind of exploration with the body. Because like you said, there's so much stuff, like maybe not even just in this lifetime that we've experienced around touch or not being touched, receiving affection or not receiving affection, maybe as a child, or receiving affection that we really don't want, and it leading to also all kinds of trauma and beliefs around being touched as an adult. But there could be lifetimes of stories around, the body and what it's for, what it can be used for, what I have used it for. There can be so much guilt in seemingly stuck in this body. And allowing ourselves to go in the direction of unlocking some of these beliefs through body work is a really cool and beautiful and really healing way. Yeah, that I've seen for myself and I've seen it for other people. I know sometimes, in the massage school or, whoever I've sort of encountered since then, some bodies seem like they crave being touched, and it's like there's a magnetism, right? You kind of approach them and it's like, oh, okay, this one really needs something, seemingly, right? And obviously it's all stories, and it's like so weird to even like talk about it because it all seems really paradoxical, right? But it seems like some bodies really crave physical touch from a safe person. And like I've always felt very honored when I sort of, could feel that that's what was happening. And yeah, like even in the sort of meridian dance world that I was in for a bit with this Taoist master that I've talked about before, there were so many amazing moments working with complete strangers on this little massage table and really letting the spirit work through me in those moments and like being a channel. I remember being one time I was there was a client on the table, and Master Tao, he somehow positioned me on this person's body in a way where I felt like a swan with its wings spread out, and I felt it was like I was this, yeah, it was like there was energy being channeled through my entire body into this other person. And I think they're just experiences that in the end always lead to, for me anyway, to an experience that's beyond the body. And that's what really tickles me about the whole thing. And that's why I think it feels so paradoxical in my mind, because it isn't ever about the body for me, even with body work. And, you know, yeah, it's just something very non-physical that happens when bodies come together in these kind of, energetic healing scenarios. And yeah, it's really interesting. It's really, really beautiful. And like, I always feel very honored to be in those situations as well. And it's just really cool to me to unlock some of these puzzles that sometimes otherwise don't get unlocked.
Yeah, I really I love that you brought in Yogananda and back to the what's it for? You know, sometimes the spirit will use things like I talked about somebody getting their sight back or starting to see color again. Those are like little miracles for me, right? For the person, for the spirit to reach that person who's in fear about their body, who's got a story about sickness and disease, right? That's showing up a certain way. So it's fun to see how the spirit will send them a love note with a certain seeming healing in form, right? But as you said, it's really not about that. I mean, it's about that for that person in that moment if they need it, right? But ultimately, we're invited into, as you said, being that clear channel, all of us. And if you've got eons of storylines that have concretized in your energy field, you're not an empty vessel. It's pretty simple. And as you said, it seems to be that those concretized energies need to be unlocked so that they can be returned to a place of neutrality,
Mm.
peace, 0 point, however you want to talk about it. These storylines, you might say, we're carrying them around in our bodies or in our energy field. And so we have to have the healing in order to hold more light. we're always talking about ultimately holding more light, being more in the alignment with that light that is our source, and being less in the idea of ourselves as a separate entity, a separate unit, a separate body. We are in the oneness, in fact, in truth, but we're imagining ourselves to be something quite different. And the story of a body is a story of suffering, and it's a story of birth and death. It's not a story of eternity. So, these things very practically, as you say all the time, very practically, they have to be addressed. And I too find it fascinating. And I too find it to be just about the most amazing gift of grace that I ever get to sit with somebody in this way. Because if you want the healing, and if you put yourself in a position to receive it from somebody that you feel guided to receive it from, the spirit shows up. And as you were talking about, Yuta, like we're just sitting there as a go-between. I seem to be a technician, sort of, kind of. I seem to be used sort of to like plug somebody into the spirit, plug them into a little battery pack, plug them into their team or their guides or whoever, however, right? Whatever is required in the moment. And that container, when I'm called to do that, it's all grace. And the spirit rushes in. Some people think, oh, I'm a healer and I'm doing something. Uh-uh. If I'm a healer, I'm doing nothing. And I'm simply a seeming go-between for the spirit to communicate through and to do its dance through. And what I get to witness and participate in as a witness is just incredible. It is so full of love and grace and gentleness and kindness, and also sometimes fierceness when there's something that has to really get out of the way. Like I have this friend, I've worked on him for 20 years. And there were times in the beginning where he'd almost want to get up off the table and strangle me because whatever I was touching, right? Whatever little point spirit had me touching, that's where the record was of some old boo-boo. Now he knows to lay there and breathe through it and talk to his guides and talk to himself and just face it. And we move through it quickly. And we're able to make quantum leaps with spirit because the spirit doesn't want him hanging out in the density any more than he wants to hang out in the density. So when we say yes to the invitation to know ourselves truly, sometimes that's going to mean facing it in a way that seems like the body. The spirit's got to get us in to the old stories, into the old records, into the old energies, the old emotions, the old thought forms, the old beliefs, where we're stuck. And the body, as I've been shown it, is often the gateway for finding that information. So it's an amazing gift. And like you, I love, absolutely love when I'm asked to provide that kind of container for somebody. So it's a real blessing if you know what we're talking about, you know what we're talking about. And if you don't, then hopefully we've been able to say something for spirit. If it's helpful to you, hopefully we've been an invitation in how we've talked about this.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah. Well, you said everything that I would have said at the end there.
mm,
Yeah, I think that's it. Spirit always just inviting to keep our minds open and keep our minds curious and not judge anything as good or bad or right or wrong. And yeah, just really allowing spirit to guide us in the direction that he wants. It wants whatever pronoun works. So yeah, that's always just the space that we're sitting in, and that's the invitation that is here in these recordings. So yeah, thank you, Elizabeth. Thanks to anybody who's been joining in. And if you don't have anything else, then we'll say see you next time.
I do have something,
Hmm.
which is whoever has stayed and been here with us, thank you. Like
Hmm.
this is the cauldron of healing. And in a way, it's the healing for the body right here, right now. Like whoever swims in this with us, you know, this is like one of those table sessions, you might say. And we all get to receive it. It's available for everybody, but if you've stayed here to participate to the end, it's like the grace is here. It's totally here. That's why we do these recordings. It's like we're here for the healing. And yeah, it's such an amazing gift. So I'm so grateful for all the energies that are coming in to support us in this. You know, it's an amazing gift. So thanks, Yuta.
Thank you too.
Bye for now.
Okay, bye.